Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks. Today with a different type of video coming to you today from my study. As you can see here, it's a bit of a mess, so I apologize for that. And we're going to be having a look at an article that somebody pointed out to me in the comment section on one of the videos, and it's called What Is It Like to Live in Spain? And it's by a guy called Shane Carney who works at self-employment, and it's a bit of a horror story. This guy spent a couple of years in Spain, from what I can read, living on the costas, and his 2 years in Spain were a bit of a negative experience, let's say. So we'll go through the article, have a look at some of the key points, and hopefully this can help you decide whether Spain is the country for you. And I'll also give my 20 cents worth on some of the things that he mentions here. So it starts off by saying that he lived in Spain for 2 years, doesn't live here any longer. According to his profile here, he is living now in Bulgaria. And the first thing he says is that Spain is good for a holiday and to live there, but not to live and work there. So obviously what he means by this is that you can live in Spain if you are not depending on the economy here. Now, this is something that I say in a lot of the videos. Don't rely on the Spanish economy unless you're in one of the sectors which is going well at the moment. So, for example, IT and things along those lines. Because if you are in the Spanish economy, get ready for a roller coaster ride. You can teach English, I think I've mentioned that in previous videos, and you can get by okay, but remember that this is a sector that is also changing in my opinion. So he goes on to say here that the Spanish have a peculiar attitude to work and have no concept of urgency. People are friendly, but a nightmare to get them motivated. Mañana is not a myth, and if you're self-employed or an autónomo, you need to pay an eye-watering 260 euros plus your accountant's fees. Now, at the moment, the minimum that you have to pay if you are self-employed is about 283 euros. I think that is what I paid this month. I've been self-employed for about 17 years now, I would say. Lost track really of how long I've been self-employed, and every month I have paid that 260 euros plus. As I said, 283 euros at the moment, the minimum. You can pay more. Now, this all depends on what type of pension you want to get when you retire. The more you pay, theoretically, the more you're going to get. The less you pay, theoretically, the less you're going to get. Now, a lot of people pay the minimum because it is a fair chunk out of your salary every month. And what people do is that they save money for their own retirement, not necessarily giving it to the state. Now, a few years ago, the Spain government encouraged people to set up a private pension plan, but there's no way that you can avoid the 283 euros if you are self-employed. You just can't do it. You can't decide to have one or the other. You have to have both or only one, which is the state system, if that makes sense. And as he says here, you have to pay an accountant's fee. You can pay an accountant or a gestor, which is what I do. And it works out to a little bit more than that per month. He says you can choose to ignore paying this, but you will be caught. And obviously the chances are that if you are working in cash or you decide to work in the black economy, as they say, you might get caught, because what he says here is that the police are very active and will ask you for your papers at checkpoints. Now, obviously, if you are driving around in a van, that might happen to you because they presume that you are self-employed, and they might pick you up and ask for your work papers to make sure that everything is legal. But it hasn't happened to me in the 21 years that I have been working in this country. I haven't been stopped by the police for that purpose. So I can't really agree with him on that point. Maybe it happens more in the Costa del Sol because there might be some more dodgy business going on down there. I have no idea, but according to this, that's what he's trying to get at. He says that if you do get caught, you will have your bank account frozen, and getting it unfrozen is an exercise in self-mutilation. Now, I have been told by other people in the comment section that if you do get your bank account frozen by Hacienda or the tax authority here, it is a bit of a nightmare. But he says that Spanish lawyers do very well there from the common problems that expats get themselves into. And I suppose that people that are not really familiar with the way Spain works can have a problem in this sense. Now, he goes on to say that if you live on the Costas, the only active industry is the property industry and associated businesses from it, for example, property sales. Now, that could be true. I presume that there are more activities on the Costas, but of course you're going to be limited given your language skills. If you're not fluent in Spanish and you don't have an idea of how the system works here, very difficult to get into other activities. And he says here, for example, holiday rentals, pool maintenance, tradesmen, golfing, airport transport, anything that caters for the tourist industry. Because remember that the tourist is king on the Costas here in Spain. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Alicante, Valencia, Murcia, Malaga, all of that coast, all down the Mediterranean coast there, the tourist industry is king. Now he says scams are alive up and down the Costas. Now I can't talk about this because I live in Madrid. I'm not living on one of the Costas, so I don't know what these scams are, but according to him, he says that boiler rooms are very active, penny stocks, vintage wine, carbon credits. Basically, they are havens for shysters, he says here. Every scam known to mankind has either originated there or has been rehashed there many times over. Now, I have heard stories that the Costas are a bit dodgy when it comes to this type of thing. However, I don't think that they are Spanish fraudsters a lot of the times. I think this is more English fraudsters or English-speaking fraudsters who are trying to target those vulnerable groups, normally retired people or, again, people that don't understand how Spain works very well. He says it's also common to see wanted notices on bar walls containing a short narrative on how clients or customers were done by some shyster. Again, I haven't seen this, and even the times that I have been to the Costa del Sol, I haven't seen these things on the wall. But then again, I haven't been to those expat areas a lot. I haven't been to the Marbellas, I haven't been to the Esteponas where there are big expat populations. So I can't really comment on this. He says they usually target clueless working class people. Okay, so this is the type of target. So remember to be careful should you be deciding to go and live on one of these Costas here in Spain. And he gives a series of links to various timeshare frauds and things along those lines, which I'm sure happen because they happen everywhere, let's be honest. Now, he also goes on to talk about local protected areas. So if you are working as a tradie, you have some type of trade. He talks here about a guy who did a fantastic job on driveways and he strayed into the wrong area. He went into a Russian area apparently here, and the Russians spoke English and they informed him that this was his last job in the area. So standover tactics, according to him, are rife on the Costas. Again, can't comment because I live in Madrid and I'm not involved in this type of thing. I'm not a tradie or anything like that, so I don't really know. So I can't talk about this. Now, the next thing he mentions is the bar in the sun, and that dream hooks many expats every year. And it's true. People come to Spain and they fall in love with the country. They fall in love with the relaxed lifestyle. They fall in love with the weather, because in places like Malaga, even this time of year, December, the weather can be good. And if you come here in the summer, you fall in love with the chiringuitos. You fall in love with the lifestyle. You fall in love with the beaches and all of that relaxed lifestyle that you think you're going to get. But he says that they come here and they have no clue about what they're doing. People that come here and open a bar, for example. He gives the example of a woman who opened a bar with her husband and she made a fantastic roast with Yorkshire pudding, but everyone else did the same thing. So the objective there would be to specialize in something a little bit different. And of course, if you're not going to be competing with the local Spanish bars, which obviously would be difficult to do, there's going to be a lot of competition from other expats who are doing the same thing. The competition is horrendous, he says, usually non-scalable and fraught with difficulties. Okay, any business, I suppose, is a bit like that. And it says here that you are part of a false economy, working long hours and not enjoying that lifestyle that you came here to get. He says Google bars in Spain and see just how many agents are trying to capitalize on this. giving the idea that they're just trying to get you your money. And he says that 90 to 95% will close within 2 years. Now, I know that this is a fairly common own business scenario. You open a business and it closes because doing business is difficult. And a lot of people don't know the sacrifice that it takes. And opening a bar in Spain, it's going to be a long day because bars open in the morning, they open for lunch, they open for dinner, and it's that constant clientele. So a lot of bars here in Madrid will open at 7 o'clock in the morning and not close until 1 a.m. the following day. So it is a long day if you decide to open a bar. But hey, it can be a lucrative business if you're able to find a niche inside the bar world. Now, he says brokerage businesses are common enough. Have a look through the site listings, and most of them, in my opinion, are hobbies gone wrong businesses. What he means by that is that they're not proper businesses, they're not proper SLs. SL stands for Sociedad Limitada, and they are the smallest business that you can legally operate here in Spain. And he says that these consist of internet clubs, bars, as we mentioned before, t-shirt and mug printing businesses, news agents catering for bucket and spade tourists, coffee shops, property management firms, etc., small companies. And from his experience, be careful what you buy. In his case, to use a car analogy, he uses a car analogy here. He says he bought a Nissan Micra of a business thinking that he was buying a Mercedes. And despite doing the due diligence, it went bad. And the previous owners, he said, ran so fast when they got their last payment, it wasn't funny. Now, he talks about pensioners, saying that a lot of pensioners are going to have to leave Spain because they won't be able to afford private health care when Brexit kicks in. Now, Brexit is still up in the air, as we know, so we're not quite sure on exactly what is going to happen when Brexit hits. But should you need to pay for private health insurance, it can be a bit expensive, of course. But I think there's a system now called the Convenio Especial, which means that you can pay an amount per month and access the national health system. And I think it costs less than private health insurance, but the waiting times obviously will be longer. He says electricity is also very expensive in Spain, the dearest in the EU. Now, I don't know whether that is true, but electricity is expensive and it continues to rise every year. And you hear horror stories of people that can't afford to turn their heating on in winter, people that can't afford their electricity bills, because remember, salaries for a lot of people are not very high, and to have a big electricity bill can be a killer. Food and alcohol are reasonable. It says car hire is very cheap. Internet is slow and overpriced, but Movistar is upgrading. Now, I don't have a complaint about the speed of my internet. In fact, I think it's better than Australia. In fact, it's a lot better than Australia from what I can understand. Here I have fast uploads, fast downloads, so no complaints when it comes to internet. But he does say that renting property is the best way to go, because there's so many rental properties available that you will be spoilt for choice and be able to get something fairly well. Now, that is true on the Costas, but in big cities like Madrid and Barcelona, I don't think it is necessarily the case, because renting in these cities at the moment is quite difficult. So take that into consideration should you be thinking of coming to a big city here in Spain. But again, on the Costas, because there is such an amount of holiday flats, but it is changing now because of the Airbnb scenario. So take that in mind as well. And he sums up here by saying that Spain is great to be retired and live there. The climate's great. Health services are excellent. I would retire in the future, but on the strict condition that I never work there again, part-time, full-time, nothing. So don't come to Spain to work is his advice. He said expats don't generally live there long term. Very few have been there over 8 years, and he met one guy who had been here for 30 years and he had a good business and things were going okay, which was the reason he was able to stay so long. Economically, it's very challenging there. The lifestyle is good, and they know the reality of returning back to a wet, depressing climate is something that they don't want to do. Survival is the name of the game. It says people there are so transient. Loyalty is not a factor. Now, again, the idea when you come to a country like Spain, my suggestion is to always learn the language, be able to mix with the local population, make friends with the local population, because if you depend on people that are transient, as he says here, people that are coming and going all the time, there is going to be that trust factor. But if you're able to make Spanish friends, because at the end of the day, we are living in Spain, so if you're able to make Spanish friends, you will find that they are not transient because they're not going to go anywhere, and those are the people that can help you out in a sticky situation. Don't rely on other expats would be my advice as well, and the advice of somebody here. And if you are going to rely on that, make sure that it's somebody who has been here for a long time and knows how the country works. A lot of people have been here for a short period of time, set up a business and giving advice and don't really know how things work. So be careful with that. He also says never pay up front for anything in Spain. Cash on completion. Take everything and most people with a pinch of salt until you get to know them and the place better. Enjoy it, but be careful, very careful. So this is a bit of a horror story. Enjoy it, but be careful, very careful. Now, I know a lot of people here that haven't gone through half of the problems that this person went through in his 2 years. In fact, the only thing that I can presume is that he wasn't prepared to come to Spain. And this is the article that he wrote. So what can we say? Enjoy it, but be careful, very careful. Now, you have to be careful everywhere you go. Spain is a paradise for some, but it can also be a difficult place to get by. So keep those things in mind. My advice, don't rely on the Spanish economy. Try to have something outside Spain, because if you do, you could fall into some of these traps. And according to this, if you live on the costas, you're going to come across a lot of people that are going to take advantage of you. But again, I can't say that that has been my experience living here in Madrid or my experience traveling around the country either. Maybe it's got something to do with the fact that I can speak the language and I have a rough idea of what is going on. But anyway, a link for the article will be below. Read it, see for yourself. Questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.